Welcome back to my garden. Friday and indeed December has rolled around again. You just can't escape December. It catches up to you sooner or later and brings with it all that promise of some exciting family gatherings in the end of the year. So there we are, make of it what you will. This week I was reading Austin Kleon, the Steal Like an Artist guy, reading his newsletter, and he made a reference to a BBC documentary about David Henty. And he made the reference in part because the documentary actually does mention something that he'd said about how it's better to copy than plagiarize. Well, I'm not going to go into the details of exactly what he meant because I haven't seen the documentary, so I'm not sure, but I think it's probably quite self-explanatory. And certainly fitted in the context of David Henty, because I did a little bit of research about him, and he is a master honest forger. His story is quite interesting. He did 5 years in jail for passport forgery. Apparently he was very good until he got caught. And he found that he liked copying things. And it's not clear from the documentary or short interview with him that I saw to what extent he was selling forgeries. But nowadays he has a thriving business where he does forgeries on commission, but not forgeries, they're copies. He signs them, but he does everything that a master forger would do. He does the research, the materials he uses. He digs out and finds old canvases or boards to paint on. So he really does produce what is essentially a exact as it can be copy of old masters and modern works of art alike. Van Gogh, Picasso, and a lot of British painters. So there we are, David Henty. And when I was doing a little bit of background reading, and I was interested in it because I'm interested in copying art. A line that I'm really exploring in my own work is the idea of reworkings of well-known paintings. More than just wearing your references on your sleeve, doing a reimagination of famous artworks and saying something with the way you sort of reimagine the work. So that's very interesting to me in terms of my own art practice, since I thought perhaps this will have something interesting. And it was on the interview that I saw was on a YouTube channel called Extraordinary Lives. And as is so often the case, that was a fascinating coincidence, because during the week when I've been thinking about what I wanted to speak about, an idea that just floated into my mind is this very word to talk about, this very word, extraordinary. And so, more than a coincidence, a little serendipitous nod in the right direction, gentle shove from the universe, perhaps. Because what I've been thinking about in terms of the word extraordinary, it's a word that I've often mentioned in these garden chats, because I'm very much in favour. Much of what I'm advocating in terms of a life philosophy is that, we all need to lead extraordinary lives, but perhaps that requires us to rethink what we mean by extraordinary. I mean, this video channel features interviews with people at the host is a lady, Yael Broer, who's an Israeli relocated to Brighton, and she seems to interview successful, quirky, interesting local people in the Brighton area. And Brighton is quite a sort of bohemian, cosmopolitan sort of place, so there seems to be no shortage of people that she can interview, like David Henty. But she very much means, when she says extraordinary lives, what we normally think of in terms of extraordinary, as in beyond the ordinary, exceptional, really. When I was thinking about this word extraordinary, one of the things that struck me was it's one of those words that we sort of pronounce in a slightly unusual sort of way. Extraordinary. Extraordinary. Tro as in T-R-O-R. But of course it's spelt extraordinary. And so I did a little bit of background reading about that. How this comes about and why. Nothing too exciting. But it did strike me that perhaps our rethinking of what extraordinary lives might mean could get a little bit of clarity from thinking about the word itself and how we might, and as one of the articles suggests, we can reasonably pronounce the word extraordinary. So ordinary makes perfect sense, but what do we mean by extra? Extraterrestrial, not of this earth. So in that sense, extra is from or the opposite, really. So extraordinary is really not ordinary at all. But extra could be thought of in another sort of way. Extra as in extras. More of. It's more of a, I suppose, slang way of using it. Extras in films, additional people, an extra helping is not in itself different, it's just another helping. And in that sense, it struck me that perhaps what I'm trying to suggest to people when I say, why don't you lead an extraordinary life, is that perhaps what you have to do is an ordinary thing, just more of it. And indeed, when you look at extraordinary people, my brother and I often have chats about tennis, and we find ourselves talking about Novak Djokovic, who is an extraordinary man and has led a truly extraordinary career. But he's done it by not being an extraterrestrial, not reinventing what tennis is, not really. He's just done more of it. He's doubled down on what lots of other tennis players have done and just been consistent to a greater degree. He has been relentless in executing the same things that everybody else executes. Now, perhaps not exactly the same things. Maybe there is some sort of secret source. But it does seem to me, the little that I can glean, and I'm not a huge tennis fan, but it's interesting, is that someone like Novak Djokovic isn't actually doing something different. He's just doing it over and over and over again. And therein lies the secret, that our extraordinary lives could be simply doing something, but with far greater consistency, commitment, focus, without wavering, without taking days off. I love athletics, and I was always struck by an interview with Daley Thompson, the great decathlete, and he pointed out that between the Moscow and the Los Angeles Olympics, 4-year time period, he'd missed something like 3 days of training. Injuries, illness, exceptional events, nothing got in the way. He trained literally every day. He was a model of consistency. He found a way to make a small addition every single day, bar 3. And I get the impression that's very much one of the secrets to someone like Djokovic's success. And indeed, it's the secret to one of my favourite artists' success, someone like Alexander Calder or Picasso. They're people who showed up every day and just made something. And when you look at Alexander Calder's back catalogue, it's tens of thousands of pieces of art. Not all of them were masterpieces, of course not, but it was just great consistency. But that